Come on, don't act like you're not turned on by fuel economy, especially at today's gas prices. And yeah, we're being a little bit facetious here, but if I had a nickel for the last time that anybody asked me within the last month about a hybrid, I'd have like a good 35 cents.
Yes, of course, the main appeal of this Venza is the hybrid powertrain. And in fact, it's not just the appeal, but it's actually the complete focus. It only comes in a hybrid. It also only comes in the e all-wheel drive and a CVT transmission.
The Venza, though, has a bit of a weird spot in Toyota's lineup. It's essentially the crossover version of the Camry, but the RAV4 exists, and the RAV4 exists with a hybrid. So what we're going to do here today is kind of go through the nuances and the differences to see which one you should get.
So we'll try to discover some of the main differences and nuances between the Venza and the RAV4 when we talk about exterior and interior a little bit later on. But right now I want to focus on the powertrain. And this is going to sound familiar because it's in pretty much every other Toyota hybrid that we've reviewed here on Downshift, and that is the 2.5 liter 4-cylinder making 176 horsepower. Now if you add in the electrical hybrid motors that it comes with, you get up to 219 horsepower. So you basically have 2 electrical motors up front, 1 for each wheel, and then you also have 1 in the rear as well. The Venza e all-wheel drive system is a bit more sophisticated than the RAV4 system. You have the ability to send up to 80% of the powers to the rear wheels, which obviously helps prevent front slippage. The RAV4 can only send 50% of the power to the rear wheels. So I definitely think that this Venza might be a little bit more suited for climates that have more snow or slippery conditions.
Even with the added power from the electric motors, the Venza is still pretty slow. 0 to 60 is done in over 7.5 seconds. However, this thing is a little handler. It loves to turn into a corner. The front end feels sharp and dynamic on corner entry. It feels planted and confident in the chassis and suspension around mid-corner. It's only around the end of corner exit where you realize that there's just really not a lot of power. However, this thing isn't meant to be a sports car, so I'll let Paulo tell you about something you probably care a little bit more about.
So yes, you have a small engine with a 2.5 liter 4-cylinder. You also have the tri-motor hybrid system, and you also have a CVT. And this basically is to ensure that no power goes to waste. In other words, they're trying to make this thing as efficient as they possibly can. And they do a good job at that. You get 39 mpg combined from an EPA, and as we've been testing, we've been getting around there. I actually did a little bit better than that on one trip that I was doing mixed highway and city.
You probably also care about ride and ride refinement, and it's good news here. Yeah, as sporty as this thing turns out to be, it doesn't accomplish that by sacrificing your ride quality. The body is still soft enough and supple enough to soak up mild to moderate road imperfections, and you still have good cabin refinement and sound deadening to make it feel luxurious and upscale.
And one of the main reasons why it's so nice to spend time in here, especially on the highway, is because you have the Toyota Safety Sense 2.0. And obviously they're rolling out new generations. They have a 2.5, and this doesn't have all the bells and whistles that does, but if you turn on autopilot, this thing does a really good job of doing just that. Behind the wheel of this thing, there's a lot to like about it, but there's also a lot to like about the RAV4. So let's meet up with Matt and talk interior and exterior. Okay, so the 2022...
That's like 7 chimes. That's way too many chimes, Toyota.
2022 Venza, we have the Blueprint Blue. What do you think about it?
I think it looks kind of cool. It's got an interesting look. When I was shooting B-roll at the park, there was like a family of ducks, and for whatever reason, that made the front of this look kind of like a duckbill.
Yeah, I mean, I think overall it's a really sleek design. I think it's like a junior RX 350. You know, yeah. I mean, it's similar design to the Lexus RX.
Yeah, you can tell that they're definitely going for like sleek, elegant styling. It's very swoopy lines. You've got your kind of swoopy DRL running lights that kind of mold into each other. It's a clean look, but it's not what I would necessarily, for me, consider an exciting look.
I like it. Yeah, Matt and I disagree here. Matt thinks it's very underwhelming. I think it looks like sleek.
A car.
It's unique. It's unique. It's sleek. I prefer this look to a RAV4, but that's
okay. But what do you think about these wheels?
That's just me. I actually kind of like them. It's gun. I had a similar wheel on my GS350 that I had. This like gunmetal. That's kind of gunmetal.
Yeah. So they're specific to the limited trim, and they got kind of like the tri. It's a 5-spoke, but like a tri 5-spoke, which is kind of interesting. It's fine to me, I guess. It's a car to me. The profile, I think, is fine. The coolest angle for me of this whole car is the profile, but just the back half, because the cuts and grooves that you get on the back look kind of reminiscent of an Aston Martin DBX.
Yeah, and the taillights kind of wing out on the side as well.
Yeah, it's kind of cool. And then the back itself, I mean, what do we have here?
Yeah, I mean, I liked how the taillight goes across the whole trunk there.
Yeah.
Slanted, sloped back end here as well. You got dual exhaust.
Yeah, it's a handsome look. To me, it's just not super exciting, and it catches a lot of dirt right here.
Yeah.
I mean, in fairness to it, it's been raining all week. We're filming this on the only sunny day that we've had this car for the entire week.
Yeah, so sorry it's a bit
So all
dirty.
of the B-roll that you've seen has been really dark and moody, but hey, here we go. But it's also now freezing, so should we go inside?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, so yeah, speaking of the trunk, we talk about, yes, you have the sloping roof line, and yes, that's like the elegant thing, and people like it, but you do sacrifice a little bit of trunk space that way.
Yeah, so actually the numbers are, in the Venza you get 28.8 cubic feet with the seats up, and in the RAV4 you get 37.6, so a lot more room in the RAV4. Here, you know, it's kind of looks over function, right?
Yeah, I think we'll notice that as we talk about the rest of the cabin too, but let's talk about these back seats. I mean, they are perfectly usable. I'm 6'1", you're 6'2". I've had no problem back there. They're reasonably comfortable. You know, you've got normal amenities. But the coolest thing about this whole car, to me, is the sunroof. Because you have that kind of like electro whatever that we had in the McLaren, where you have an actual shade that goes back, but then you have like this tempered effect where if you push this button, then the sunroof will like quote unquote open and then close. So it's like a really cool like electro current that goes through it to kind of gloss out the sun.
Yeah, basically controls how dim or how much light can be let in through the sunroof, and it's super cool.
Yeah, to have that feature in a Toyota, that's also in a McLaren, and I think the Porsche Taycan also has it. But like that's pretty cool company to have that feature. Yeah,
no, I think I agree with you. That's probably the coolest interior feature that they have. Moving up to the front seat and the driver's seat, some interesting little quirks that we both don't necessarily like.
Yes.
The start button is in kind of like the middle console area. I mean, they basically put it in the glove box. It's such a weird spot to put it. The heated and cooled seats is kind of out the way. You have to like really put your arm back to turn them on. I also think that they could have grouped the heated steering wheel with those buttons. It just makes more sense if they're right here.
Ergonomics make no sense.
No, they don't. And speaking of ergonomics, tell me about the center console or the infotainment system here.
Want to get into it. So this is, again, much like the trunk thing, it's form over function.
Yep.
Where they clearly went for a design with this thing, and there's no physical volume button, there's no physical heat control buttons, there's no physical like tuning knob. It all goes to this screen. And it's all covered in piano black, which means it looks good for 3 seconds until you get it off the dealership lot, and then it's covered in your fingers. And then the screen itself, it's big, it's a very big screen, but it's a third of it is constantly taken up by either your HVAC controls, which should be down here, or your fuel economy, which is staring you in the face right there in your cluster.
Yeah, and I also think the angle of the infotainment system, I wish it was more kind of straight up and down, because it does get a glare sometimes.
Yeah.
But I do think what you just mentioned, the lack of volume knobs and this look over function, fit over function, that's biggest L in here for sure. Like, I need a volume knob, especially with how slow it moves, and a temperature knob, especially with how slow it moves in here.
Yeah. I mean, the rest of the ergonomics in the cabin are pretty decent. Like, the seats are nice and comfy.
Seats are very comfortable.
This cool gold stitching. The leather is really nice. The leather on the dash itself is really nice. You've got this kind of like gold piping throughout, which is very Lexus Lite. You've got like a metal accent. It's cool. It's nice. I see that they've accomplished part of what they went out for.
Yeah, I really like the materials in here besides this fake bamboo wood look. I think we both don't really like that.
It's not good.
And then last thing I'll mention, the digital gauge cluster. I mean, that's kind of like an updated thing. They got a lot of good information on there, trying to track your, how fuel efficient you are. You got a really nice heads-up display as well. A lot of good information up there is that you get, how fast you're going, the speed limits.
Yeah,
efficiency.
All of the information, it gives you all the things that you need, but it's very clearly oriented for fuel economy.
Yeah.
So like you have your state of charge, like if you're idling or like coasting, it'll say charging, and then it has like your power deployment, and then same thing down in your digital cluster. Like your speedometer is almost like deprioritized up in the top right, and your fuel economy is like front and center.
Yeah.
Which is just interesting. I mean, it makes sense with what car we're in, but it's just kind of interesting. But speaking of charge, I did want to talk about these chargers down here. So underneath the piano black controls, you have two USB-A chargers and a wireless charging pad, which would be fine, but you have the power button that's hanging down, which gets in your way if you want to like put your hand in there to grab your phone.
Yeah.
So it's, again, just little ergonomic things that don't work quite well. Oh, and then I'm seeing this, so the last thing that I'll say, and I know I'm ranting, but the last thing I'll say, the EV mode button here, borderline useless, because you can't use it over 25 miles an hour, and you can't use it over like 15% throttle, or it'll turn itself off.
Right.
I don't know when you would use that.
Yeah, it's kind of pointless. Because, I mean, it automatically kind of goes into EV mode if you're below a certain speed anyway. But
right, yeah.
Let's get into final thoughts.
Let's do it. So, should you buy a Venza over a RAV4? I don't know. Would we buy a Venza over a RAV4? Paul might consider it, but I don't think that I would. It's not that the Venza is bad in any way. Aside from a couple weird interior ergonomic choices, it's actually a really complete car. It drives really well, it's comfy, it's efficient, and it's practical. The only problem for it then is the RAV4 does pretty much all of those same things for less money. But if you want something a little bit more grown-up feeling, or a lot more rare, then the Venza is a very solid choice. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.